It's in! Campbell comes off the bench to be a hero, a superhero. Breakthrough. It's taken a while, but it's been worth the wait for Cardiff City.
The mark and new beginning. We are the ones of the spoken word. We are the ones who keep the planet spinning. And yes, one day we will rule the world.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation at the home of the Andy Campbell Football Show. And this is Series 2, Episode number 1. The show is available live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. A.C.E Podcast Nation, of course, your home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts and more. Do give us a follow on social media, subscribe to that YouTube channel and click the bell for notifications. Most direct way to support us. And of course, you can get the audio versions at your favorite radio and podcast platform. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation and it'll come up with plenty of shows, over 460 on various subjects. But just as we wait for a few latecomers, even though we were a bit late, I must say, a big thank you to Black Diamond Sports as ever for all their support around the show, the channel. Black Diamond Sports is a global sports agency who represent sports stars from around the world. For more information, you can visit their social media pages as well as their website, the links to which are in the description below. And today's sponsor, the sponsor of the Andy Campbell Football Shows, as it were, is Bespoke Financial and Darren Ralston. And of course, Darren still giving away a free whale worth £140 cash with any new policy which is taken out. Just check them out, give them a call. Do not miss out on an incredible offer. Just tell them that we sent you. And as long as you take out a service with them, you get £140 back. What's not to like about that? They've looked after Andy with various policies over the years, including critical illness, injury cover. They're top of their field. They provide award-winning service. As I said, there is what's not to like about it. We are proud to partner with such a top-class brand, and we thank them for sponsoring the show. But for the first time in a while, I am delighted to introduce the goal collector, the fox in the box, still the king of the Millennium Stadium, my co-host, ex-Cardiff City and Middlesbrough striker, the speed machine, the goal machine, Davy Jones's favourite son, Mr. Andy Campbell. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Good evening. Yeah, very different. I can't remember the last time we did a show. And we were talking about the protocol and the run through. But no, delighted to be on. Got an amazing guest. Can't wait to introduce and dig deep into his life and his football career, because he had an amazing one. But I'm going to start with something. I got sent something by Cade. I know Cade in our group chat at the minute. He watches the show just late. Cade's dad. Unfortunately, was diagnosed with cancer a couple of weeks ago, and he's just started treatment. So, Cade, if you can get this message to Mick, hope everything's all right, and keep fighting, Mick, because we're all behind you. So, fingers crossed, everything works out for Cade, his family, and Mick, and his dad, and everybody. So, from everyone on the show, from everyone anywhere, you know what I mean? Because it's all been doom and gloom, hasn't it, for a long time. You know what I mean? Restrictions have been lifted today, which is great. So, hopefully, we can have a little bit of positivity soon.
Spot on, mate. And we're a big community here with the channel, with the show. We all like to look after each other and encourage each other. So yeah, big shout out to Mick. And of course, I'm delighted to welcome our first guest of Series 2. He is ex-Notts County, Sheffield United, Birmingham City, Watford, and of course, Scottish international midfielder. It is Mr. Paul Devlin. Welcome, Paul. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, lads. Good. Thanks for having me.
No worries, mate. Really
great to have you on, Dev. Great to have you on. You know what I mean? It's ex-teammate of mine. I know we're going to dig deep into your career, but you know what I mean? We talk about camaraderie and about probably we've been on the Euros and we've been on about teams, and team spirit can go a long way. One of the things that I noticed, and you stood out a mile when you played, Dev, was just your energy and your attitude in and around the place. You know what I mean? When you were having good times, having bad times, and how important is that then, from a footballer's point of view, that you've got somebody around the place who's got that kind of extra bit of energy?
Yeah, I mean that was always a big part of my game. I never professed to be the most gifted player in the world, but I always used to try and give everything I got, whether that be in training or just having the crack around the place with the lads. Probably took it a little bit too far at times, but no, I loved it. I love my career. we were speaking briefly off air, weren't we, about having the crack with the lads, and I definitely think I was fortunate. I played the best part of 15 years, but I much preferred the first half of my career to the second half with regards to team spirit and the lads and that togetherness. It's a strange thing to say, because I had quite a good bit of success later on, getting to the Premiership with Blues and getting my first international cap at 30. But like we spoke about earlier on, that togetherness with the lads was always massive for me. I made some lifelong friends in football that I still see and go and have a beer with to this day. So it was a really important part of the game for me.
Interesting. Do you know, that really interests me.
But we've
sorry, go on, Ange. Just got a bit of a delay.
No, go on.
Ange,
we've said, haven't we, how important it is, I think, that team spirit can get you a long way. You just said there, Dev, about important it is, about the happiest time and probably what wasn't the most successful time in your football career, so to speak. But for me, it's just it speaks volumes of the kind of managers what were running you played under, kind of teammates you had around you, that they were the most probably successful times, because you pushed other people along for them. Might not have been personally your successful time, but it was good and probably more successful for those kind of guys. And said there's not many, and people say you make many friends in football, but you do when things are going in certain ways, and probably you spend more time off the pitch than you do on the pitch sometimes playing football. So you've got to get the right balance, and the balance is key, and camaraderie and having those kind of characters in football is key. You don't see them anymore. You know what I mean? People talk about Gaza, and obviously you just had the Euros, Euro 96, those kind of players, and I'll put you in that category, who likes to have a joke and play pranks and do this and do that. But football doesn't have those kind of people anymore, or it doesn't seem to have, unless they're hidden away and we don't know, we don't hear the stories anymore. Yeah,
I mean, what I would say, and I think it's really difficult for the lads now with the advent of social media and camera phones and all that. They can't get up to some of the things that we used to get up to years ago when we was going out having a beer and playing up, So I do feel sorry for them. I do feel a little bit sorry for them that way, that, I dare say they'd like to go out and have a beer and have a laugh and a joke, but you got somebody there, going to take a picture of it and you send it to the newspapers. But yeah, it seems a bit sanitised now, the game, doesn't it? The characters that I used to love growing up. I was a Blues fan and Celtic fan growing up, and we had some great characters, the likes of Tony Coton down the Blues, Noel Blake, people like that. And I just want to give a special mention to Big Mick Harford as well today, who was a big hero of mine, and he's just made it public that he's battling prostate cancer, Big Mick. So I just want to give Mick all my best. Absolute legend of a man, and I'm sure that he'll beat it. So yeah, there doesn't seem many characters around like those sort of fellas now.
I totally agree. I echo what you just said there, though, about Big Mick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Sorry,
I'm going to log out and log in again.
Sorry, mate. It's difficult. Technology, innit? With the delay makes it difficult. What I was going to say is, Paul, the thing which interested me, just when you initially were speaking to Andy, then is about your enjoyment of your early career, but as your career developed, the enjoyment got less. Is that because of the way the game changed, and perhaps, I'm asking you, I guess, but obviously back in the day when Andy was playing as well, you guys were able to go out and have a beer and have a bit of a giggle and whatnot throughout the week. But as the game developed and sports science and all these different things became more prevalent, is that the reason, or is there other reasons sort of alongside it?
I think you're exactly right. The game. I made my debut in '92 the season where it was the old First Division before it became the Premier League. I played a couple of games in that league for Notts County, and I just think, I was never in an academy or anything like that. I came through non-league. I didn't turn pro till I was 19, so it was, I was doing it for something that I'd be doing for nothing anyway. But yeah, I mean, when the sports science sides come in, more foreign lads kept coming in. The sort of whole attitude of the game changed really. And I'm not saying it wasn't for the better, and we've had some fantastic players, and the advent of sports science and medicine and all that is brilliant. But I enjoyed it more. I had a better time with my teammates the first half of my career, and that's not to say that the lads I played with in the second half weren't great lads, and we had great times. But and I think as well, because I was only young, as you get older, you settle down, you get a family, you get more responsibilities. You have to be a little bit more serious, which was never my strong point. So yeah, it was a strange one really. My career was better as I got older, but less enjoyable.
And I guess the other thing, Paul, as well, is like it's not just the sports science side of it, like you said, like family and things like that, but also like times have changed with media as well. So like footballers, Premier League footballers, can't just go down the street and buy some sugar or just go for a meal with their missus or a couple of beers with their teammates or their friends, because they got media photographing them and following them around. Yeah. That makes it also more difficult, because I would imagine, to me, they must be like, I can't be bothered with that hassle, so we'll stay in. Or, you'll have people around your house and stuff like that. Whereas, like you say, back in the day, there was a social side. But also, that's not to say that during that period, people like yourself and Andy and all the other players who played in that era, they didn't take the football any less seriously. But there was a social side to football.
Yeah, very much. So I think if you look at the amount of the length of time that myself and Andy and people like us played, you don't play that long unless you're doing something right. 15 years or whatever. So you got to be doing something right. But I love that interaction with the fans as well, whether it be at Sheffield, Notts County, going out having a beer in the boozers after the game, speaking to them, telling you if you've played good or if you've played bad. And I don't think fans get that now off certainly not Premier League players. I don't know what it's like, sort of Championship and lower down. But that was always part of the game that I really enjoyed. Because I remember as a kid, I've still got a picture on my phone of the first professional footballer I ever met, Big Joe Gallagher. I was 9 years of age, and he came to the Macadam pub in Birmingham and presented the trophies. And it's always stuck out in my mind that. So, I'm thinking, to go and put your arm around someone and have a picture with them or have a beer with them and just talk for 30 seconds about the game. I know the impact that had on me when I was a 9-year-old kid. So I think it's a shame that fans don't get that as much now with the modern day player.
Yeah, I mean, Andy's so old that when I was a kid, he came and presented awards at my football club. No, I'm joking, brother. But we're nearly the same.
He's not.
No, we're nearly the same age, bro. Nearly.
We are.
So I wonder what. Go on. You go.
Sorry, I think I'm having a nightmare on my kind of. I think it's key though. Lifestyles changes as well. Like Dev mentioned there about players who came in, foreign players. Foreign players come in and they do things in different way. Moderation. They still drink, but they'll drink a glass of wine every day. We didn't do that. We probably couldn't handle it in that way. One glass of wine would turn into 12 minutes later on, and and it'd be a great night, by the way. But the foreign players would be able to do it and go home and turn up for training the next day. Well, we'd turn up for training the next day. Training would be a good laugh. It would be a little bit more tapered down and watered down because story, but it's and sometimes I don't see players having fun. I see pictures of Jordan Pickford and all the England lads going out at the minute and really letting their hair down, enjoying themselves. And you know what? Fair play to them, good luck to them, because every single one of them deserves to let them hair down, because they've worked so hard over the course of probably 2 years. With COVID and not having a summer last year and having the Euros this year and all the stress and good to them. But I don't ever take back those moments and those times, because Dev said there, my happiest probably time in my career was probably either being a YTS when I'm getting paid £37.50, or when you're socialising and having the time of your life as a young person, you know what I mean, and learning life skills, more importantly, you know what I mean. It's just things that nobody can ever take away from you.
I've still got my first contract that I signed at Notts County, so bear in mind it was in the top division, and it was 325, 350, 375. That was my wages for 3 seasons, and I was as happy in those 3 years as I ever was in my whole career. Just to be playing, just to be a pro, and just to be playing football full time.
Well, you've mentioned there now, like twice in the space of a short space of time, the stuff you've kept. I've got to ask: are you a big like memorabilia collector? Like, have you got things like your first shirt, your last shirt, all these?
No,
like,
do you know what? I wasn't, because I was never one for changing shirts, because I thought that they were the enemy. I didn't want anyone's shirt; they were the enemy. So I probably got about half a dozen shirts from down the years. I mean, it's mad. I saved every contract that I signed for every club, but just can you give us a shirt? Can you do a signed shirt? So I probably gave away 90% of the stuff that I had down the years.
Paul, I've got to ask, just before we flip to the Magnificent Seven, we've had this question asked 3 or 4 times already, so I'm going to ask it now. Donna, Andy's dad asked it. I think Gaz asked it, someone else as well. During the Euros, were you supporting England or Scotland?
Scotland. Listen, don't let the accent fool you. My dad's from a place called Coatbridge, just outside Glasgow, and all that side of the family is still up there. Every school holiday, every spare minute I spent in Scotland. So it wasn't a case of it being, when I got a Scotland cap, a long lost relative or a granddad. It was always a massive part of my life growing up. When we had the home internationals, my dad used to scour the pubs of Birmingham and bring the 20 drunkest jocks he could back to the house to watch the football. So no, listen, it was always Scotland first and foremost. But I think England done fantastic. I can't help thinking in that second half, Southgate got it slightly wrong, and that's being harsh on him, because he probably got every other decision right. But I think England had, probably their best ever chance to win a competition in that one just gone, lads, to be honest.
And did you want England to win the final?
Do you want the truth or the...
No, I want the truth. I want the truth. It fascinates me.
It didn't bother me. It honestly didn't bother me. Whoever won. My kids are there and they're supporting England, and they still can't get their head around why I support Scotland and not England. So they'd have loved it. I think it would have been great for the country with, the 18 months that we've had. I think we got a little bit carried away again, as England tend to do when they have a couple of good results. But no, I mean, I was firmly in the Scotland camp, so you can imagine the stick that I get every time Scotland play or England do well. I get pelters.
Oh yes, and you would. That sounds like you had the exact same feeling about it that I did, and I kept getting asked on the shows we were doing, do I want England to win? Do I want it? And I was like, I don't want England to. No, I'm not going to be cheering them on.
Yeah.
If they win, I'll be happy for Andy and people who I got family members who are English.
You were honest there. You were honest. Who was honest there, was?
Yeah. I was when England missed their penalties, I was crying like a baby. with laughter. No, right. Magnificent Seven. So in this, Paul, what it is, I ask you 7 quick fire questions. You just basically give your first thing which comes to mind.
Okay.
And away we go. Nice and easy. Nothing too strenuous in there. But we never know. Well, a couple of grenades in there maybe. You never know. Haven't heard that noise for a while. So, Paul Devlin, Magnificent Seven. Always nice and easy to start. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Favourite TV show?
Alfida Zaynpet.
Oof, good answer. Most hostile atmosphere you've ever played a game of football in?
Blues Villa.
Ooh, nice. Notts County or Sheffield United?
Oh, come on now. Listen, I'm not going to separate the two. I love my time at both of them.
Here we go. Good. Best manager you've ever played for?
Great question.
quality?
Again, difficult to split for me. It'd be Steve Bruce or Neil Warnock.
That's interesting because I've got some Steve Bruce related questions in the live chat already, so we'll get to that in a minute. And nice, easy question to finish. Doesn't have to be football related. Who is the greatest Scotsman who has ever lived?
Got to be Sean Connery, I think.
Oh, well, that's a good one. I like that. I always like that when we get an answer that we've never had before, and no one has ever said William Wallace. So,
nope.
Sean Connery. I was thinking William Wallace because that's what every I've seen. I feel like we've had that a couple of times. But yeah. So moving on, because I do want to kind of move us along because I know Andy's got a load of questions for you. I got questions for you, and there's questions in the chat. So tell me why is our next little feature, and that's basically I'm going to ask you and Andy a question, and you guys have got 60 seconds to answer, talk about it, etc. But as the guest, Paul, you get to decide if you'd like to go first or second.
I'll go first.
First, like it. So the question is, how can Scotland and Northern Ireland follow England and to a lesser extent Wales to reach tournaments regularly and then compete at said tournaments? Your 60 seconds starts now.
I think for Scotland, looking at Scotland's situation, very, very difficult. If you look at what, say, for instance, Celtic, who have dominated for the last 10 years, get for winning the Scottish Premier League compared to what clubs in England get for getting relegated, it's, there's an astronomical difference. There's only 6 or 7 million people in Scotland, or whatever, a tiny population compared to England. And the long and short of it is, we're not producing the players at that sort of grassroots and home level that we were 20, 30 years ago with the Kenny Dalglishes, the Graham Souness's, the Charlie Nicholases, Murdo McLeod's, Davy Cooper's, all quality players that we used to, you look the 70s and 80s and all the teams that did well in England, they had at least 3 or 4 Scottish international players playing for them. And I just don't think we're producing those players. So ultimately, we've got to invest more at the, in the game at grassroots level and hope that we can start bringing them players through. But
if that's a director of football starting at under 16s or early 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, 18s, 21s, B team, full squad, they've got to start on making a 4 or 8 year plan. You know what I memean? It's got to be. England did it probably 4 years ago and went through the youth teams, and the youth teams won the World Cup, the 18s won the World Cup, 19s won the World Cup. I totally agree what you said there though about Scottish football. You know what I mean? They're a selling nation. They're selling the players over down south, and sometimes that's a shame. You know what I mean? Celtic and Rangers, if they can make a stand, sometimes a buying a Premier League player, a big one, and making a stand, then other players might follow, and it might be a nation where you can get a more competitive league. The league needs to become more competitive, and they only do that by the team that are in Europe. And that's in the Europa League and the Champions League, and the league being more competitive. And the only way to do that is by bringing better players in. That's a hard question.
Well done. It is a hard question, especially for the first show back, where you're not into the flow of doing them every week. These next questions not any easier, I'm afraid. It's probably even harder in some ways. So, second question is: Andy Carroll has left Newcastle. What's happened with Andy Carroll's career? Obviously looked so promising in those early years, and where is his level going forward? Because he's barely played in probably the last 4 years. From what I can gather, he's been fit at Newcastle but hasn't been selected. He's still young enough to play. So where do you think he should go? And what, career-wise? Talk a little bit about Andy Carroll. So, Paul, your time starts now.
I think with Andy Carroll, he'll look back whether it's been injuries or how much does he want to play and be really disappointed at the end of his career. Because if I was a manager, I personally wouldn't touch him, because the simple fact is I'm not disputing the kid has ability and he can play, but he doesn't play enough. It's pointless having a player there that plays as little as him, because he's going to demand big money unless they put him on some sort of pay-as-you-play deal. I don't know if he was fit and he wasn't playing. why wasn't he playing? Was he not training well? Was his attitude not well? But ultimately, for me, footballers need to play. And if you've got someone that plays if you averaged his career out, what would he play? 10 games a season? Something like that. If you average his age and how long he's been playing now, which ultimately it's regardless of how good he is. If he's sat in the treatment room or in the stand, he's not going to do you too many good. So I think to a certain extent, it's I feel bad to say wasted career, but he hasn't made it.
Yeah, see, I like Paul because as soon as he says his time's up, he cuts off straight away. It's not like Campbell who carries on talking for 10 minutes afterwards.
That's only because of my connection.
Yeah, it's the delay, mate. That's what it is, isn't it? It's the delay. It's just one of those things. Do you need the question again, Ant?
I'm ready.
Ready to rock. So your 60 seconds starts now.
I agree entirely what Dev's just said there. For me, I think it's a bit of a waste. For me, a player's got to want to play. A player's got to want to play on a Saturday. If you're not playing on a Saturday, he's not in a position where he needs the money, but he wants to play football. When you look back at you're going to look back at how much he scored, how many games you played, did he fulfill his potential, did he get those England caps that he should have got? He played unbelievably well for England, then all of a sudden he got dropped by his country because he wasn't playing football. You know what I mean? If you're fit at Newcastle United and you're not playing, why aren't you playing? Is it because of your ability? If you're not good enough, go and find the level that you're going to play week in, week out. If that's a championship, then go and play. If that's League One, go and play. If I play 50 games a season, if your body allows it, your body does allow it, his body's not tuned enough to go and play 40 games a season, which I think is really sad for a footballer. You know what I mean? Because that midweek games and Saturday games, he should be playing 40, 50 games a season for the next 4 or 5 years, but I don't think his body's ready to do that, and I think it will pack in if it did do that. I feel really sorry for his body for that, but for me personally,
yeah, it is difficult, isn't it? Because
hard question. How can that?
He's had a few nasty injuries, and he's had a lot of niggling injuries over the years. But from what reports say, he's been fit now for the last year or so, but he still hasn't played. And I remember reading something about 18 months ago where someone was questioning his desire to play and whether part of it was like psychological because he's been injured for so long. He kind of feels every niggle and every twinge. And I'm not criticizing if that's the case. I'm not criticizing him whatsoever. I know what it's like to be in pain all the time, and it's very difficult. And it's just unfortunate because I think he's actually I think he's quite a talented footballer. But like Paul said, if you've averaged like 10 games a season over your career and playing as long as he has, it's not enough to really, for clubs to pay you the amount of money that footballers get paid.
What I would say as well, so is, I mean, Andy will tell you, it's very, very rare as a footballer, maybe the first game of the season, that you're not carrying some sort of knock or some sort of niggle, some bit of tightness or a bruise. You're always carrying a little something, but you just have to go through it. But if he's at that stage now where mentally you can't play unless he's not feeling anything, then he's only going to play a couple of games a season because you get tackled in every game. And, or especially the older you get, you feel things it takes you twice as long to recover.
Yeah, spot on, Paul. Spot on. It's
also style of play as well, though, Si.
Yeah. It is.
Style of play. If people play with a false nine, you've got to play away for Andy Carroll. You usually balls in the box, and for me, those systems, those players are few and far between at the minute. You know what I mean? So you've got to fill the gaps with that. So. You know what I mean? Part of me then is starting to feel sorry for him because it's the way that he plays. You know what I mean? Can he get hold of the ball and can, you know what I mean, take the game in between? Probably not. I mean, he needs involved in the box. He needs flick-ons for centre forward. Nobody plays 4-4-2 anymore. It's normally one up front with three behind, and with a little bit more leg work, balls over the top, and you know what I mean. Maybe he is a kind of sub player where you can bring on for the last 15-20 minutes in both boxes for defensive set pieces, attacking set pieces, and get balls in the box. But he won't hear that.
Yeah, and from what it's only what I've read in the newspapers, he doesn't seem to want to drop down to the Championship. I think he did do one year in the Championship. I think he did when Newcastle got relegated, but he has been reluctant to drop down. But ultimately, I don't see any Premier League clubs taking a risk on him. Maybe somewhere like Burnley or somewhere like that, where they might say to him, "Well, like pay as you play." But if they can go and pay,
I look at Chris Wood.
Yeah,
Chris Wood's 10 times the player he is. So why would they pay 40, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand a week for someone who's not even going to get a minute more than Chris Wood's going to get? And they've got, who else have they got? Vidra. They've got players who've done well in the Championship, who deserve a chance in their team. I don't see anybody who's going to take a risk, because that's what it is. Even a pay as you play deal is going to cost you a lot of money, because he might turn up and play 10 games. If that's 25 grand for every game he plays, that's a lot of money for a football club who can't afford it currently. Who can afford it?
Yeah, no, that's right. Paul, you mentioned a minute ago about players like wanting to play and stuff. And Ian in the chat just said about the amount of players within the Premier League who are earning a crazy amount of money and just aren't playing football. Like you've got like Phil Jones at Man United. I think he's on like 100 grand a week. Hasn't played a game of football in probably 3 years. But a lot of that time he has been fit. He just is not being selected in the squads, let alone the first 11. And then for every team there's a handful of players in that situation. I
could never ever get my head around players that don't. Listen, we all go through spells where we're out of the team through lack of form or injury or coming back from suspension. But wherever I was, if I wasn't playing regular for an amount of time, I'd want to move on. I'd want to play. I want to look back. I'm 50 next year. I want to look back and say, I played 500 games. I scored 100 goals. I played in that game. I played not that I sat on the bench for someone for 12 years, but earned a load of dough. At the end of the day, football's about playing. Football always about playing for me, and I really couldn't get my head around players that were happy to sign contracts after contract to be subs, basically. And there's enough of them out there, let me tell you. I played with loads of them who were happy to sign,
totally
weren't really bothered about playing. But that would have I'd have booted everyone in training. I'd have just completely lost my head if that was my attitude.
So here's a question for you both then. What about Tom Heaton, who's gone back to United, who unless they do sell one of De Gea or Henderson, he's going to be third choice. He's moved there knowing that he'll, at the moment, probably won't even play League Cup games. Is it different for a goalkeeper, or is he back in his ability to force himself into number 1 slot or number 2 slot?
I think it is. I think it is slightly different for a goalkeeper, but you still have to say. I mean, how old's Tom Heaton? How old is he?
I think he's 32, but that's
so he's not old in keepers' terms. For me personally, I'd still be wanting and look and maybe play for another 3 or 4 or 5 years somewhere if I was him. He's not going to play, is he? He's not going to play. Very, very rare. So he's basically admitting
he's 35. He's 35.
I was not 35, but maybe listen, at that age and a goalie, maybe he could have gone somewhere else and play. I can half see it a little bit in that scenario, but it still wouldn't be something that I personally would want to do.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, do you think it's because it's the club he started his career at, mate? And do you think that's why he's gone there?
Yes and no, I think. Yeah, I think yes and no. I think I agree with what Dev just said there a little bit, but I agree with what you say. I think there's only these opportunities come around often. You know what I mean? Going back to Man United is probably a chance, once in a lifetime opportunity. He probably sees Man United as an opportunity to win something as well. You know what I mean? They're bringing players in. They're getting a little bit of a steamroller effect. They've got players come back from the Euros. They've got an opportunity next year to do well in Europe, in the league, FA Cup. So maybe he sees a chance to win a trophy. Maybe he sees his chance to battle it out to be number 2. You know what I mean? You've got to back his own ability. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I think he's doing it himself.
I think he's exceptional.
Who knows? You know what I mean? So you don't really know these kind of questions yet, and it could turn out to be a very good signing for both parts. But you're on about there, talking about players. I read a story the other day. It was Chelsea against Peterborough. It was a pre-season game. Watched the highlights, and Danny Drinkwater, he signed for Chelsea for £35 million and hasn't played a game. And 3 years ago it was. You know what I mean? He won the Premier League with Leicester, signed for Chelsea. And listen, I'm not saying he should be playing games, but if you don't play for a year, you go and play somewhere else, you go and sign for another team. You don't let things fester on waste, because Chelsea have got that money. They would have paid you off anyway. It's not a financial decision. He's won the Premier League at Leicester City. You don't go from being a Champions League player and a Championship winner to not playing again. I just don't, said that As a player, you give yourself an amount of time. Mine was probably a month. If I didn't play in a month, I'm knocking on the manager's door. If I didn't play in 6 weeks, I want to go on loan. If I didn't play for 2 months, 3 months, I'm handing a transfer request in. There's the amount of time that you give it. You know what I mean? Nowadays it's different because there's only 2 transfer windows, so you're in a limited opportunity, limited window. But every transfer with me, I want. If that was the summer, Christmas, then the summer, Christmas, then the summer. These players have had nearly 8 transfer windows and they've not moved anywhere and they've not played any games. I think that for me, it's poor, it's heartbreaking because players. It's a short career. When you look back at your career, yes, you'll see that Premier League winners medal, but that should have been 2, 3, 4 Premier League winners medals potentially. You know what I mean? I don't see how they can't look back with a little bit of regret, a little bit.
So with Drinkwaters, in his case, I know he went on loan. I think it was to Villa. Might have been.
Turkey.
Someone said,
He went to Turkey,
but he went on loan to a Premier League team, didn't he? And he got sent back because he headbutted a teammate. And I think there was some sort of incident with drinking as well, which was in the paper. So I question whether the reason he's not playing football at Chelsea is if his attitude is, if it's where it should be, to be. But then it's a weird one because
we can only read the stories, can't we? We only were only told what we're allowed to hear. You know what I mean? But end of the day, if Chelsea wanted to get rid of him and he'd done something wrong, they could have sacked him and he could have gone. Yes, they would have saved a lot of money on him. Whereas for me, they've paid his wages for 3 years and he's still there now. This is his 4th year, and he's playing in a pre-season friendly with players who also haven't played in the last 3 years, 4 years. You know what I mean? They've got a full team of them while all the players are coming back from the Euros. So it must be a very strange thing for a manager like Tuchel, for example, who's having to see all these players play when no one else is seeing them play. So it's a difficult one.
It is very difficult. So just while we wait for Paul to come back, what do you think of? I just want to ask you about Lee Tomlin and his Cardiff City career. Do you think it's over? Is he going to play this season? Do you think he's going to go? Where do you think it stands? Because obviously it was only a couple of seasons ago where he came back at start of pre-season looking like $1 million, motivated, in sensational shape. Where are we going with him? He didn't play a lot of football last year. Do you think he's going to stay at Cardiff?
He's been involved in a couple of pre-season games. He's got himself back in the shape that probably should have been in. I still think he's got some fitness to go. I think he's still got a long way to go because it's not just about getting in good shape and looking in good shape. His body's got to be tuned, ready to play games, and not just games. Listen, he's Lee Tomlin. We're expecting him to play Saturday, Tuesday for 50 games because if Cardiff are going to do well this year and they're going to create chances, score goals, they need him to play every single game because you can't play 3 games and then miss 3 games because the games that he's missing, they miss him too much because he's that influential. He's good on the pitch, he's good off the pitch. He has that much influence. But so they need to get these things right. And for me, there's no point in playing a game, missing a game. And how can you justify paying people's wages, for example, and putting them in and bringing them out? You mean that yes, rest them in cup games if you're not interested in that cup. If you're going for the league this season, you want to get in the Premier League, then he's got to play, for me, he's got to play 35 games a season, and Cardiff City will have an opportunity to get in the Premier League or get in the playoffs because he's that good. He could turn every game. He's that good. He can win a game on his own. He can create chances for the centre forwards. If you've got him with Kiefer Moore up front, you've got an opportunity for Kiefer to score 25, 30 goals this season, and Lee will chip in with another 5, 10, 15 goals. And then there's other players. Your centre half score goals because of the way that they play. You know what I mean? So for me, there's a great opportunity for right, but got to be mentally and physically right. There's no point putting him in and pushing him if he's not fit.
I've got to say, I do not see a scenario where Lee Tomlin is ever able to play 35 games a season. I just don't think he will be able to do that anymore. But I do think that if
it's the same as Andy Carroll,
they can manage his games though, that they could get a tune out of him, and he can be very influential.
It's the same as Andy Carroll, isn't it? You know that it's the same as Andy Carroll. If you start him in a game, are you going to get an hour out of him? Are you going to put him on the bench and get 30 minutes? Are you going to winning the game and bring him off? Are you gonna bring him on in a tight game to change the game and bring it back to the way that you want it? It's a very difficult one, because he's got to also fit the way that Cardiff City play, with the way that Mick McCarthy plays, because Mick plays it in a certain way. He plays different to what Neil Warnock plays. You know, I know Dev mentioned Neil at the start. You know what I mean? He knows exactly how he plays, and Neil tuned Lee Tomlin. I think he got the probably the fit end before he had his injury problems, and he hasn't really recovered from probably being unfit and getting that kind of mindset of picking in.
Okay. So, Paul, I'm going to throw some questions at you from the live chat. We've got a couple of absolute belters. So, there's a couple about like you and your career. There's a couple about asking your opinion of other stuff. So I'm just going to pick the first one, which I see, which is Donna Perry says, do you think Harry Kane is overrated?
Oh, I mean, you'd have to say, if you look at the amount of goals he scores, then probably not. But no, it's a good question. Would I put him up there with the likes of some great strikers that I've seen, like Van Nistelrooy and that down the years? Probably not, but I'd probably say he's about the best homegrown forward about at the minute as well. So it's a really good question. I'd just probably say no. Just probably say.
Would you pay 150 million for him if you were a top six side?
No. What is he now? 28, 29?
Yeah. So
this is his last big move. So realistically, wherever he goes for 4 or 5 years, there's not going to be anywhere near that resale value. But you do what I would say, you could probably guarantee yourself 20 goals a season by buying him. Now, for one of the top clubs to have a guaranteed 20 goal a season, it's worth big money. And Andy will tell you the hardest thing to do in the game is score goals, and he does it all the time. So, 150 million, probably a little bit too expensive, but somebody will pay big money for him.
Absolutely. Cade says, who is the most aggressive player that you played against?
Played against? Stuart Pearce liked to tackle. He was very aggressive, Stuart Pearce.
Yeah,
there was
extremely.
Yeah, Martin Keown as well. He was really, really physical. It's difficult to think of one, really, because you think of one, then somebody else pops into your mind. But as a I played sort of 90% of my career wide right. I think Stuart Pearce was the one that you thought, oh, here we go. You're gonna get belted today.
Interesting. I wouldn't fancy playing against Stuart Pearce, I've got to be honest. There's a few though, one there from that era, like Ruddock and Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira. There's a few which like to tackle, shall we say?
But they're all winners, though. They're all winners.
Yeah, absolutely.
All winners.
And then that's it, isn't it? It's that it comes as part and parcel of it, doesn't it? That mentality. There's an interesting one which we don't hear every day. Gaz says, and he says for all three of us, who is the most famous person in your phone contacts? Paul, go on, you go first as the guest.
I haven't got anyone famous in there, I don't think. I don't think that it's just ex-footballers, really. Yeah. I don't know. Robbie Savage, probably. Sav. He's quite famous now, isn't he, Sav, on the telly? But no one else, really.
I think. Andy, you've got anyone spring to mind, mate, for you? I don't know if he's frozen. I don't think I've got. I'm trying to think if I've got anyone. I've got loads of fighters and footballers, and all sorts from like Paddy Pimblett and some boxers and whatnot. So I think some media members. No one, or Johnny Owen, I guess. Eddie Webber, probably from the business and the rise of the foot soldier and that sort of stuff. I think that's the most famous one. Andy, who's the most famous person in your phone contacts? Me and Dev are not doing well. He had Robbie Savage, so I think it's pretty good. Here he comes now.
Most famous one. I've been in contact with Neil Warnock He's obviously one of my currently Middlesbrough manager, so I'll go with Neil because he's more current on this show because Dev mentioned him and he's obviously ex-Cardiff current Middlesbrough manager. So I'll go Neil.
Yeah, I mean Mehmet Dalman, but he's not necessarily famous. But Cardiff City chairman, I think that's a pretty good one for a Cardiff fan as well.
Too right.
It's a good one, isn't it? What else we got? So there you are. Who's the biggest knobhead, Paul, that you've met through football in all your years in the game?
I tell you, I used to hate, and I thought he was Danny Tiato, the left back, played for Leicester and Man City. I hated him. People used to go on about Muscat, Kevin Muscat, but a lad I used to play with, I don't know if he was at Sheffield when you was there, Andy Sean Murphy, big centre half, Australian lad. He was quite pally with Muscat, so I did actually go out a couple of times in their company, and he was all right, Kevin Muscat. He was just a nutter on the pitch, but I hated Danny Tiato. He was just nasty, and he'd step on you and everything. He was just he was a knobhead, big knobhead.
Excellent. I do enjoy that question when it pops up because everyone's got different reasons, different answers. But I mean, that's what the question I'm guessing is looking for, isn't it? Is those players who wind other players up and get a reaction out of them. That's what people want to hear. So let's have a look. I'm just going to pick one more question from the live chat, and then we'll let Andy ask you a question or two because I know he's eager to do so. There you are. Paul Hipkiss said, "Who's the best client you've ever PT'd?"
Oh, Paul Hipkiss, without a doubt. Paul, I've got to say that's why he's asking the question. And I tell you what, ask him where he got that shirt from. I thought it was Magnum PI when I've just seen that shirt on the picture. No, Paul was great. Paul come and train with me for about 18. Been big Blues fan as well, which always makes it better. So Paul done great.
Like it. Well, right then, Mr. Campbell. I know you're itching to ask Paul some questions, so let's release you from the wild.
Oh, and I just want to start out. You mentioned a little bit on about starting non-league football. You know what I mean? You see all the teams now in academies and starting off obviously like apprenticeships and stuff. But tell everybody what it was like there earning your stripes in non-league football, because you see some other people who've done it. Ian Wright's done it, and some other top players have done it. But did you think that was the right way for you to do it? Did you, because you were playing against men at a young age? But how important was that development for you?
Really important, and you just said a statement there, Anne, which is massive. Playing against men, all these under 21 leagues and under 23 leagues and stuff like that. You know, at sort of 17, 18, I was playing with men in the conference. I was at Stafford Rangers. I had a European Cup winner, Desi Bremner, who was about 38, 39 in my team. You know, non-league legends like Mickey Toohey and people like that. And you learn off them. And you're playing against men that you can put the best 18-year-old up against another 18-year-old. But then putting up against a bloke who's 31, 32, who's been around the block, he's going to leave a bit on him. He's going to elbow him and kick him. And it's a completely different thing. And I was glad that, I went for trials at Derby and they said no. I went for trials at Oxford and they said no. I was up at Leeds. I was up at Liverpool. So, I done the rounds, but I stuck at it. And eventually, like Neil Warnock gave me a chance. But I think it made me more appreciative of when I did turn pro. And it toughened me up. Definitely playing against men from such an early age definitely toughened me up. And, it was always a side of the game that I quite enjoyed anyway, that physical side of it. So I look back and I'm quite happy the way that I come through. I see these academies now where they're taking lads at 8 and 9, releasing them at 14, breaking their hearts, and the kids ain't playing again. They're taking them too young. And a lot of these academy staff will still take great pleasure in telling you, only one in every 100 make it. I'm thinking, well, there's more money and getting spent on academies now, and you got more kids in the system, but still only one in 100 are making it. So why is it better now than when you just used to have a youth team and signed the 2 best players from the youth team? So I'm not a big fan of the academy setup, as you can probably tell.
I mean, that's a fair point, Anne, isn't it? It's like people bang on about the academy systems and everything being better, but I think we've talked about at length on this show and some of the other shows, the mental health shows I do, about the impact on players who are in academy setups from like a young age, say 7 or 8, all the way up to the 16, 17, and then suddenly they're told, bang, you're not good enough. They've spent their last 3, 4, 5 years as a teenager banking on the fact that they're going to be the next Ronaldo or they're going to be a footballer, and then football clubs just discard them, and then they're left to deal with it on their own. That's I think is a big thing,
not just them as well.
Problem within football.
It's not just them. It's parents as well. Parents are banking on the kids to be a professional footballer, and it's pressure on the kids. You know, that's why you see young people making poor choices when they do get released from football clubs that think it's the end of the world. And there's a level for everybody. Dev's just a really important point. We've got so many people in the system, currently in the system in academies, for whatever ages, that's from 8 all the way through to 16. But the percentage is less than 1% making it. So why is the percentage getting less when we've got more players? Surely it should be getting higher because we've got more players, because the coaches are better. We've got ex-players within the system now. We've got psychologists, we've got sportists, we've got more training. Surely there's got to be a better volume and a higher volume of players making it. It's just impossible. Dev mentioned there about, and I mentioned previously about playing men's football. The under-23 league for me is a sham. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. Continents League football's got to come back. It made me the person I am. From 16-year-old, I was looking to be a YTS, but I was playing reserve team football against men straight away. I remember playing against Matt Elliott at Leicester, Spencer Pryor. Yes, he wasn't as old as an experienced player was, but he was still a seasoned pro at Leicester City and at Man City when I played against them. So they'd had a good career. They were hardened and they'd earned the stripes. So it's an experience that you can't replicate. You go to under-23 leagues and
Give him a minute. See if he comes back.
For me,
no, he's back. Sorry, mate. You were good, and then you just froze up.
Yeah, I know. You get a lad at 23. Hasn't made his debut in the first team. For me, if you haven't made your debut by probably 18, 19, 20, you probably got to look. Is this the right club for me? And do I need to drop down a level to step back up? Or do I need to drop down a couple of levels to step back up? Do I need to go to semi-pro to get back in the pro game? There's no point in getting dropped at 23 and not being able to find a club. For me, sometimes clubs can string players along for so long, and it's detrimental to the player. It's such a shame for me. I'm the same there, but everyone on the show knows my feelings about academy football and under 23 especially. I think it should be back to Pontins League. I'd love to watch reserve team football and watching the Paul Devlins back from injury playing with a 16-year-old kid, helping him out. And imagine Dev playing as right wing against a fullback who's coming into the game. It's good for Dev because he gets to play against a young lad, but it's great for the young lad to play against an experienced footballer. It's win-win for everybody. I just don't see it as a bad thing for me. It's just a win-win. I just don't see why it's not getting brought back in.
And I remember speaking to Tommy Mooney a couple of years ago when he was working at the Villa at the time, doing their under 23s or 21s, and he was saying, Dev, he said, we've got lads that they're on nowhere near the first team, in the 23s on 3 or 4 or 5 grand a week. He said they're not interested in dropping down and going to play at Wickham or Northampton. So they're just happy to sit there. But again, it's what we spoke about earlier on. How bad do you want to go and play? Do you want to have 4 years in the Villa under 23s and then get released, or do you want to go and play? I mean, Dele Alli was a good example, wasn't he? Dropped down and played 100-odd games for Milton Keynes, then gets his big move back to Spurs. So I just think, there's got to be a willingness from these lads to want to go and play and test yourself.
Absolutely bang on. It's just so fruitful side, isn't it? We spoke about at length about how players have got to have that willingness to want to go and play. It's probably a year. It's a year out of your life. But you take that step back to reinvent yourself. Because Dele Alli did it. There's other players who've done it. You see players who are going to get moves in the summer, who played for the country. Listen, it's all about getting. But you're going to showcase if you're not playing on the side. People watch 23 football and see if you're ready for the first team because, and I'll use Villa and Walsall as an example. Walsall's men's football week in, week out is a tough standard. Are the 23 lads at Villa ready for it? Probably not. You know what I mean? They'll look at lads who are playing in around that level, or even at Stafford Range, for example, and looking at a young lad who's playing against men week in, week out. He's more ready because he's playing men's football. And for me, sometimes lads have to understand that there's people every year coming through the system, every year coming through the game, every year dropping out from other level, higher level, same level. You do another number, and got to be very careful that you don't just another number and not a professional football anymore, because it's once you're out of it, you're out of it, and there's probably no getting back into it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a weird thing though, isn't it? Because we all want these young footballers, if they're good enough, to play and to go and play, and I think. Sometimes, like someone made a good point there about Cardiff City, they had basically a choice where they had Sean Spencer and Ruben Corwell, and they made a choice to keep Corwell and release Sean Spencer, even though both had been talked up as exceptional footballers for the club going forward. But they've let one go, and they've gambled on Ruben Corwell being the one that's going to make it. But Reece makes the point, like, if they're both good enough, why wouldn't you keep both and then send them both out on loan, rather than kind of gambling on one making it and one not? It's this weird thing. The way the academy system is run, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, from all sides, from the football club side, other than the academies and the development centres taking money off parents for training and travelling and all this different stuff, kit and the rest of it. Like, I don't really understand what it's doing for one thing I will say I think it's improved is the actual coaching and getting players technically better, young boys technically better. But it's a weird one. Andy, what do you think about the Cardiff thing there with Spencer and Colwell and gambling on one rather than keeping the both and loaning them and whatnot?
I think you've got to really understand that it's the final decision, isn't it? You know what I mean? So for me, I would have probably sent them both out on loan to see if they're both ready, and probably pitch them both at the same level. If that's League One, both at the same level, and just keep an eye on them both and see if they're both ready. If one's ready, bring them back, leave the other one there. But there's also success stories as well. You know what I mean? With this, what we're talking about. You know what I mean? I'll use Cameron Cox as an example. You know what I mean? Obviously, everyone will know Cardiff City from Cox. Cameron left Cardiff City, went to Solihull Moor. Played all last season. I think he played about 30 odd games, you know what I mean, in men's football. He's earned his stripes, so to speak. He's now got himself a loan move to Colchester United in League Two. So he's now back in Football League, you know what I mean? So there is success stories, but we've said all along, Dev said it, yeah, I've said it, you've said it. These players have to want to play. And there's a lad who wanted to play. So he's dropped down 4 levels to step back up a level. And then I'm guessing he's want to step up a level again. You know what I mean? So it's all down to the individual. It's all down to the player. You know what I mean? If manager's having a conversation with a player and he's saying, I don't want to go out on loan, then what do you want to do? Do you want to sit and play with the 18s? Because 18s isn't going to make you a better footballer. So if you have the aspiration and the desire to want to play, then the door's over there. See you later. You know what I mean? Sometimes you've got to be that ruthless. And you know what I mean? I'm not saying that every manager's probably like that, but at the end of the day, managers have a decision to make. You know what I mean? It's sink or swim for some players, and you know, if they're told to go out and prove themselves, you go out and prove yourself. You know what I mean? You're going out to go and play. What's better than playing? There's nothing better than playing. At least this side.
I know for a fact. I know for a fact when Neil Warnock was at Cardiff, he wasn't bothered about the 23s in the slightest, because his thinking was, if they're not in my first team at that age, they ain't going to be. And I know that for a fact because I spoke to someone who worked at the club, and I've played for Neil twice as well. And that was, and so that's the first team manager with an attitude of, well, it's a waste of time under 23 football.
That's interesting because go on, Ant.
Oh, but it's true though, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's the same as being injured. You get managers if you're not used to if you're not fit, the manager doesn't want to know you because you're not there. He's only bothered about the 20, 25 people in front of him. You know what I mean? And it's not a bad attitude to have. You know what I mean? Because he's got all these.
Okay. Andy seems to have frozen, so what I'll do is I will take on we're talking academy football, Paul, but moving on in your career side, I think obviously what was it like to go on and make your professional debut? Was it a big jump in terms of quality? And also, how did that feel? How were you feeling in the run-up to it as well?
Yeah, it was massive because I'd gone from sort of playing Sunday football to conference football to pro football all within about sort of 12 to 18 months. And I made my dad, never forget, it was the end of the season. Red hot day like it's been today, playing against Coventry. And at the time, Kenny Sampson was England's most capped fullback. He had 86 caps. So I'd gone from 18 months before playing Sunday football to playing against somebody with 86 caps. And I never had a kick, to be honest with you. Nerve-wracking, you're coming from Sunday football, non-league football, and then all of a sudden you're playing in the top division. It was a big eye-opener for me. And the funny thing about it was, obviously, Notts County got relegated that year, but we beat Luton I played 2 of the last 3 games, and we won 2 games. So it was great to make my debut in the top league and get a couple of victories. But unfortunately, us, Luton, and I can't remember who else got relegated that year. And you look where Notts County are now; they're not even in the league. So it seems even longer ago now.
We went to get nerves.
Sorry. Is that why Neil Warnock is so high in your esteem then, Dev? Because obviously he gave you your opportunity, because everyone remembers the manager giving the debut, everyone remembers the person who gave them the opportunity. Is that why Neil's so prevalent in your career, in your thoughts, and how highly you speak of him?
Yeah, I think so, because like I say, I had trials at a lot of different clubs. I had a lot of disciplinary problems when I was young, especially. And he
don't
took
believe
the
that. Don't believe it.
Yeah, I did.
Don't believe
I soon grew out of that, mate, when I realised how much it cost. But Neil took a chance, and then obviously I played again for him in sort of 2000, and I was player of the year for Sheffield when he was manager there. So I had a couple of really good spells under Neil, and he knew how to get the best out of me. I'd say that's one thing where Neil and Brucey are pretty similar. Not coach. I'm not saying they can't coach, but they're not so much coaches. They're good man managers, good motivators. They know how to get the best out of people, and they always had good coaches in there with them. So I'd say that's why those two really. I had some fantastic managers, Howard Kendall for a spell, Steve Thompson, people like that. But those two, I had Brucey on 3 occasions at Blues, Sheffield, and back to Blues. Obviously Neil on a couple of occasions. So I think when you play for someone multiple times, you do build up that rapport with them.
Absolutely. Paul, were you one for kind of nerves in the run up to games, not just as a young footballer, but throughout your career? Were you someone who got nervous and apprehensive in the days before, in the hour before kickoff, or were you relatively?
No, I tell you, I always got nervous every game. I always got nervous just before you kicked off. I was never nervous the days before, but just before you kicked off. And I always wanted, like every pro will tell you, you want to have a good first touch. You want to have a good bit of control. Or if you're a forward, you want to take someone on, get a crossing or get a shot in. You get it and it bounces off your foot or someone tackles you, you think, it's going to be one of them days today. So never nervous leading up to it. But like I say, that just before kick-off, you get the flutters, and once you got your first touch, 9 times out of 10, you knew how you were going to play by that first touch. I don't know whether Andy was the same. I knew if I could get it down, beat someone, get a crossing or something, might be my day today.
It's interesting. It really is. Like the initial feel just in the first few minutes.
I think Si. I think as a player, if you're going to have a good game or a bad game in the first probably 5 minutes, you know what I mean? You can yes, you can work yourself out of a bad game if you have a bad first touch or something. You know what I mean? For me, and the way that I played was a lot of confidence based, being an attacking player. And if I could have that, if I knew the longer the game went on, probably same as Dev, that I had pace in my locker. So the longer the game went on, I knew my strength, my pace was going to probably help me the last 20 minutes if I was still in the field. So if I could start well, I knew was going to end well. I didn't start well. It made I needed to start well, because if I didn't start well, I potentially won't be on at the end. So it was a catch-22. But my first touch, my first probably getting involved in the game, you know what I mean? Sometimes, because as being a centre forward, you always take kick-off. So you take kick-off straight away, you pass it to somebody else, but you want the ball as quick as you possibly can. So, you know what I mean? For a centre forward, you pass it between yourselves and to the midfield or to a fullback or to a wide man. but then you're looking for the ball as soon as you can, and it's so important to get that first touch. You know what I mean? You see teams now that put it along the back goalkeeper, everyone gets a touch. It's just to calm everybody down. You look at watch the Euro game. Harry Maguire, he kicked the ball out of play straight away for the corner for his first touch, and then he headed the ball out, set the first goal up, and it. You know what I mean? So his first touch was horrific, but he got himself out of it straight away, and it's so important to be able to do that and have the confidence to do it as well.
Spot on, mate. Paul, a few people in the chat have asked, could you give us a story relating to Neil Warnock, please?
I could give you, there's loads, but probably some that I couldn't tell you. I'll tell you one, it's a bit vulgar though. Neil Warnock, right, suffered badly with piles. So he would always at the end of the game, right, put his suit and tie on, put his jacket on, naked from the waist down, 1 foot up on the bench, standing up, put his pole cream on. Now, if you'd had a bad game and you'd lost, he would be administering the worst telling off to the team ever whilst doing this. So you don't want to look at him because you can't help but look what he's doing. You don't want to look away because he might think you're ignoring him. So it was really awkward. And he'd done that at Notts County and he'd done it at Sheffield. But, you just didn't know where to look. But he could be going at you 100 mile an hour. And, the language you can imagine, all while he's putting his ball cream on, which, the multitasking was fantastic.
Excellent.
Quality.
I like that a lot.
Quality.
Real good.
That's a great question. It's a great one. Well, obviously, we've potentially heard this story from somebody else, Dev. But tell us about you leaving Notts County. Obviously, you got sold to Birmingham along with obviously a good friend of the show and good friend of mine, Andy Legg.
Froze.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, Leggy, and Michael Johnson were really, really close friends. Really close friends. Myself, John, and we lived. Well, it was Leggy's house, but we all sort of lived there. And John got a move to Birmingham. And I just remember Leggy wasn't actually in the team at the time. He fell out with Colin Murphy and Steve Thompson. And Barry Fry came down to sign me, and he was watching a reserve game, funnily enough, with Steve Thompson and Colin Murphy. And Blues at the time, do you remember Kevin Francis, 6'7", massive?
Yeah, big Blues lad, yeah, centre forward. Yeah.
He was Blues record signing, 800,000. So Barry's there with Steve Thompson and Colin Murphy trying to do a deal to sign me. And he saw Leggy take a throw-in. So he's gone, we'll have him as well. We'll have it. Because Leggy, he could throw it more Leggy. And he threw it flat.
Especially for Kev.
Oh, mate, yeah.
Especially for Kev. It'd have been a dream.
And it actually ended up going to a league tribunal because the non-league club that I left, well, Armitage had a sell-on and Stafford had a sell-on. And it was 40% of the transfer fee. And we went for 500 grand, the two of us. And I was valued at about 50 grand. And Leggy was valued at about 4.5. So they only had to pay, well, somewhat percentage of that. So it actually went to a bit of a tribunal.
Leggy said it was the other way around. Leggy said it was the other way around.
But Leggy, big pal of mine, Leggy. He was great lad. We had some. He's another one, I still speak to Leggy now and again. Me, him and John, I was, really, really close and good player. See, like that move to Blues for Leggy was great as well because Leggy went on to play international football and I think that was a catalyst for that. But real good lad, Leggy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So for you personally, then, Dev, was it a dream come true to play for Birmingham? Obviously, being a Brummie lad, and then obviously you've obviously played for them twice. You still got an affiliation with the club now. So how important was it to play for Birmingham City?
Yeah, my uncle, when I was about 8 or 9, started taking me down the Blues. Like I say, my dad was a Scotsman and big Celtic fan. But my uncle started taking me down the Blues when I was about 8 or 9 in the early 80s. Blues had a good team, Tony Colton, Frank Worthington, Dave Lang and Mark Dennis, really good team. So that sort of got me hooked on the Blues a little bit. And then to get the chance to go and play for them, was brilliant. The club that you've stood and watched as a boy, to get the chance to put that shirt on was great. And to sign for a character like Barry Fry was absolutely fantastic. I don't think you'll get many people with a bad word to say about Baz, and he really brought him, along with David Sullivan and David and Ralph Gold and Cameron Braden. They really brought the club out the doldrums. The club was on its knees really before they come in, and they got it back and ultimately to the Premier League.
Absolutely.
It's funny.
Really
It's funny though, Si, that people say that though, because they take a lot of stick, those three. You know what I mean? Individuals about
they do. Yeah.
From West Ham currently. You know what I mean? That there's not very many owners who do get some good words to say. So for an ex-player and a supporter of the club to say good things about them, about where the club was and where they left them, obviously where they left, you know what I mean, is quite refreshing, really. Did you feel pressure, Dev, playing for Birmingham, being a Birmingham fan? Did it add the pressure? Did it take it off? How did you handle it all? I
was lucky, really, mate. My first game was Sunderland at home, and I'd scored. I'd played for Notts County against Sunderland that season, scored 2, and we beat Sunderland 3-2. So, me and my ultimate wisdom, first game at St Andrews, and I've heard that Andy Melville was playing centre half. I was playing down the middle this day for some reason. And I, like an idiot, have popped up and I've gone, I murdered him 3 weeks ago, ran him ragged, and we lose 1-0. Andy Melville scores the goal to Sod's Law, so you can imagine what Barry Fry said to me. But the second game was a Monday night game, and it was Wolves at home, and Wolves Birmingham, obviously because we weren't in the same league as Villa, is a massive rivalry. And it was a full house, and we won 2-0, and I scored both the goals. So I got off to a flight. I think I scored 18-15 under Barry Fry. Baz went, Trevor come in. I was top scorer the next season with 19 and player of the year. So I had a good start, mate. I hit the ground running for Blues, which you know yourself. And if you're a forward and you're scoring, it makes everything a lot easier.
Paul, Barry Fry, mate, he seems to me from the outside like a real character. He's very much like, the likes of Sam Mann and Neil Warnock, kind of those larger than life characters. Like, what's he like to work with day to day and deal with? Is it difficult? Is it easy? Like, what's he like?
He was just a fantastic football man, great character. The good thing about Baz, you could have the most heated disagreement, argument, nearly a punch up with him, and he'd forget about it like that. He'd not so much, didn't hardly do any coaching. Again, he was more of a motivator and a man manager. And, at that time, it was really exciting times down the Blues, because Baz's sort of ethos was, if we're 3-0 down, we'll put 3 forwards on and score 5. So you used to see loads and, I don't think there was many 0-0s. And if you look, I know people always take the mick that Baz signed hundreds and hundreds of players, but if you was to actually break down some of the players that he signed, for 100 grand, 200 grand and sold for over $1 million, Liam Daesh, Gary Breen, Jonathan Hunt, Gary Paul, all ones that was 150 grand and went on to make the club, in excess of £1 million. So Baz knew a player, and he was infectious, Baz. You couldn't help but like him. Sometimes you'd want to strangle him, but you couldn't help but like him. But he was brilliant, and the esteem that he's still held in down at Birmingham, well, it'll be great this season, because he'll come back with Peterborough, and he will get, when he comes in to watch the game, he will get the biggest cheer of anyone. That shows you how much high regard he's held in by the Blues fans.
It's interesting. You get it like a hero.
But you mentioned there as well. So, sorry, Si. He said about there that he's still doing it now for Peterborough. He's signing players, selling them on for millions and millions of pounds. You know what I mean? He's getting players from non-league football. You've got a manager now who scours the football world. You know what I mean? I'm about non-league football, low league football, and gets gems out of there and sells them on. Normally attackers, but sometimes he's done it with defenders. He's done it with St Ledgers and things at Peterborough before. You know what I mean? He's got a track record of doing it, but he started at Birmingham and he's carried it through. Which is, it's just testament to the people on about scouting systems and stuff, but for the managers to do it, for me, managers
also hard
work
and hard work these days,
yeah, but never happens. No, it never happens.
Yeah, I think if you look at Baz, he has got you look at Mikael Smith, Aaron McLean, the lad Tony that's just gone to Brentford. And, Baz is from a non-league background as well. I remember playing against Barry Fry's Barnet team when I was non-league. And I was with him about 3 or 4 months ago. I had a cup of tea with Barry at his house, and he's still adamant those players are out there if you're willing to go and find them and not be a football snob and give someone from the lower leagues a chance. I think we suffer sometimes with a bit of football snobbery. Well, he's not a Premier League player. Well, how do you know until you give him his chance in the Premier League? Go and give him 20, 30 games in the Premier League. And let's see if he can become a Premier League player. So Baz's track record tells you those gems are out there.
Yeah, but I think Premier League clubs and Championship clubs are really... on the whole, they're poor at it. Like, there's so much talent in League One, League Two, in non-league football that the Championship clubs just don't seem to want to touch. They'll go and get either journeymen or experienced footballers who are coming to the end of their career from the Premier League, or they'll take young players on loan from Premier League clubs, and it's just frustrating because you'd think go to the lower leagues and pick up players. They'll be cheap, which is good for the football club, and give them a chance, because I guarantee you there's plenty of footballers down in the non-league system which are good enough to play football league football. Yeah,
well, I think most of the clubs in the conference now are full time anyway. There's probably not many of them that don't train 4 or 5 days a week at least, but. I'm a big believer that you've got to give these guys a chance to step up. I mean, I saw it loads of time, and I can't even remember most of the players. We'd sign for whatever club I was at, somebody who's played in the Spanish second division or played 3 games for Barcelona when they were 20, and they come over, they don't play, they drift back to Spain. I saw it every club I was at. Rather than drop down, go to the second division or the conference, get a young, hungry kid, and give him a chance. And I do think there is a certain amount of football snobbery about it. I really do.
It's interesting.
I also think, guys, for me, that I don't... like we said there's not enough people who want to do the groundwork, you know what I mean? Will these recruitment systems, scouts, will they look that far down? You know what I mean? Are they expert at that kind of level? I'd say no. You know what I mean? Because they're used to watching under 18, under 23 football before they think that they're going to find a gem. You're not going to find a gem at under 23 level football. For me, you're going to find a lad who's got loads of pace, who's playing for Hucknall Town, for example, in the Conference North, and he's scoring bags of goals. But he's got a job. You know what I mean? But he wants an opportunity, and it could be Harrogate Town signing him on, it could be Lincoln City signing him on, it could be Sunderland signing him on. And I think it's so disrespectful sometimes. These kind of players don't get an opportunity, because I played in non-league football. Dev obviously played in league football before he became a pro footballer. I mean, there's lads out there, but there's lads who want a chance out there. You know, I mean, some lads who are comfortable and are happy playing non-league football because they've got a good job and they don't want to take a risk. But there's lads who want a chance, and those lads deserve a chance. Some of them, you know what I mean? It's really important. You mentioned there, Dev, about Premier League. I've got to mention it because I watched it the other day. It was during playoff final. Obviously, it's a very important penalty for your beloved Blues. And obviously with England getting beaten penalties, with the pressure, you know what I mean, it was Millennium Stadium. Tell people, obviously, about the playoff final. Tell people about the viewers, how much pressure you felt as an individual, because those kind of moments don't come around very often. And how different would it have been if the outcome wasn't the outcome, what happened?
Oh, well, it was, it's definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest game I ever played in. 75, 76,000 people. The game's worth 150, 160 million to the club. We hadn't been in the Premier League for 16 or 17 years. So it's massive. And obviously the game itself, I don't remember too much about the game. I just remember obviously going behind, and then big Jeff Horsfields pulled us back. And then it going to penalties. We'd practiced, not that I take a great deal of heed in practicing penalties, because you can't replicate the pressure. But we had practiced them. And I knew we had decent penalty takers, but actually taking one after you've played 90 minutes and extra time, I always liked a long run up with my penalties, and I had to shorten it because I knew I was going to get cramp in my calves. So it was just a matter of getting to strike the ball before my calves cramped up. But I hate it now when I see players taking penalties with these stupid run-ups, these stutters and the move from side to side. It's a real pet hate of mine. My sort of thinking, I took probably 21, 22 penalties in my career. I think I missed one. I just used to blast it. I used to pick a corner and I used to hit it as hard as I can, because I was thinking, well, even if the keeper saves it, he's not going to hold it. you've got a chance of a rebound. And I certainly wouldn't do a silly run-up, because it's like you're concentrating more on the run-up than the actual strike of the ball. You know, if you're in doubt, and let me tell you, the pressure those lads were under, you know, I hear people say a professional footballer shouldn't miss a penalty. Let me tell you, the goal looks about that big. The keeper looks that big. And for me, it was a really emotional thing as well, because I was shattered. I thought, if I miss this, I'm going to be the Brummy that they all remember that missed the penalty. And I would have been remembered, if we hadn't won that game and I missed, you're always going to be remembered as one of the lads that missed in the playoff final. So when I scored, I think if you see, I do that. But the overwhelming reaction was, I could have burst into tears, to be honest with you. Just relief, just pure relief. And then obviously we have an 18-year-old kid step up and put one in to get us up, which, you know, has gone down in folklore. But, you know, you've got to be a certain type of player to take a penalty. I have a big joke with Jeff Horsfield about this. I remember when Bruce has gone, who wants one? Hiding behind the dugout, or, you know, it's not for everyone taking a penalty. Yeah. I think you got to be a special breed to want to put yourself forward. So I'd never criticise anyone for missing. I'd certainly criticise the technique and the run-ups.
Do you know what's that? This is so refreshing though to hear this after especially what we've just had to witness as England fans with penalties and I'll use something what Dev just said there about run-ups and I'm going to talk about Harry Kane. So Harry Kane's penalty against Denmark. Obviously Harry Kane's got a special way of taking it. Yes, he goes with power, but he changes run-up against Denmark. Yeah. Than he normally does. He normally has his quick steps and he goes and he changes run-up and he went to the other side. I don't know why. You know, there's only him who knows. Was it the pressure? Did it get to him? Yeah. But we're on about now a player who plays in front of those kind of people every week. It's just like water off a duck's back. He takes them in training and he takes them in games. He's done it at national level. He's done it in Champions League level. He's done it in the Premier League. And for it to hit pressure and for it to get to him, it must have really got to people, because you just said that it takes a different breed of person to do it. And I'll never ever go at somebody for missing. You know what I mean? I'm the same. If somebody tries to chip the goalkeeper, which that's the thing what drives me mad. You know what I mean? A run up is probably irrelevant, but the little Penenka, whatever people call it, is absolutely outrageous. Even if it goes in, it makes me think I don't like you, because you try to wind people up. You know, winding me up. But then you know what I mean? I've seen it happen for teams. For my teams, I've seen it happen for teams. You know what I mean? I remember, obviously, the Cardiff fans in the group chat. I remember it against Leicester City. I think Leicester City played Cardiff in a championship playoff semi-final, and the Leicester player tried to do it on a winning penalty, and they end up getting beat because of it. And it's just so fruitful and lives with you, because it's funny, but it's also, as a player, I remember, Dev, you'll know when goalkeepers do it. When you try and chip a goalkeeper in training, he catches it, kicks it as far as he can. And you have to go and get it, and that's always what reminisces with me. That I just see a keeper doing it, and it's disrespectful. But you know what? And it was one thing when I watched the penalties the other day for your game. It was just I knew the outcome, and I knew you scored, and I knew obviously I knew all the other guys. I knew who was going to miss. I knew who was going to score. I knew obviously Norwich knew losing the game, but you're still nervous because you know that you can feel the pressure yourself as a player, because you know exactly that. In 30 seconds, I could be a hero or a zero, and it's that's how scary it is. And for a Birmingham fan, for a Birmingham player, it must have been elation after that moment in the final. But it was just a brilliant feeling, and credit to you, because it just shows everything what you've done. It's fantastic.
And let me tell you, mate, we had 4 days solid celebrating. You had about a good crack with the lads. We had 4 days after that.
4? And then, mate, I thought, you must have been looking after yourselves then, because 4's quite. I'd
slow down a bit. I
was going to
say, Andy, how many days did you do after the Millennium Stadium? More than 4, wasn't it?
Yeah, I probably missed the next pre-season, to be honest. That's how steep it was. I came back about a stone and a half overweight. That's how steep it was. It was horrific, but it was worth it. I'll tell you that. It was one of those moments that I devil tell you. You know what I mean? I've never played at Wembley. That's one. I wouldn't say it was a regret. It's because it was getting rebuilt, but. There was something special about the Millennium Stadium during FA Cup finals, which I went to. I've been watching England-Wales games there, rugby games, but playing there, it had something special. And I'm not saying Wembley doesn't have something special, because I've never sampled it, but the Millennium Stadium with the roof there and everything, it just echoes, and it's just absolutely amazing stadium, and it's just something which, if people want to go and watch a game, if it's rugby or football or whatever's there, go and watch it and just tell them what the atmosphere is like. It just seems to have have something special about it. I don't know what it is. It's just amazing.
I was fortunate because I played at Wembley, the Millennium, and Hampden. So three of the.
I played at Hampden as well. That's when I played at Hampden. Yes, that's some stadium as well, mate. Isn't it? Because it's just it's so open. It's the first time I'd played in a proper stadium with a track round as well, and it was like that. It's full, but it looked miles away, and it made it look even better. And I don't know. We played Celtic there in a cup final for Dunfermline, and it was it was men against boys. To be fair, it was fun, but it wasn't fun. It was fun. The best bit of the game was walking out before the game and shaking hands, and then after that it was horrific. But it was nice. You got a medal at the end of it, I guess. So it was very much worth it. Very much worth it. And so you mentioned there about Hampden. How proud were you and your family? How proud was your dad to watch you wear that blue shirt or the white shirt, whatever colour, or pink shirt? Cause I know they had some outrageous.
It was a strange one, mate. Because to be honest, there'd been rumours down the years that I was going to get a call up, and I never did. Mick McCarthy rang me before he announced his first Republic of Ireland squad, because I've got great grandparents that were from the Republic of Ireland. But FIFA changed that year. FIFA changed the rules, so you could only go back as far as your grandparents. Otherwise, I'd have been in Mick McCarthy's first Republic squad. So it took me. I was 30 when I got my first cap, and the only reason I got that cap was I wasn't playing any better than I had been for the previous 7 or 8 years. But we'd got to the Premier League, and I was playing in the Premier League. And this is how strange it was. My dad was at St Andrews, so St Andrews holds 28,000. We're playing Newcastle on a Saturday afternoon. My dad ended up sitting behind Archie Knox, who was there to watch me. So he heard Archie Knox on the phone to Bertie Vokes, giving me a glowing report, and get it. So my dad knew I was going to get called up before I knew. So in a stadium of 28,000 people, just by pure chance, he was sat behind Archie Knox.
Quality.
And then obviously Bertie Vokes rang me, asked me if I'd be interested, and I jumped at the chance. But if I'm being honest with you, it probably came a little bit too late at 30. But it was, it was still something I never dreamed that I'd get to do. And, I never scored a goal, but, I got 10 caps and played in some big games, played against Germany at Hampden in a Euro qualifier, played against Holland, played against Portugal with Figo and people like that. So, it's another thing I can always look back and be immensely proud of.
Yeah, I think to play for your country is just it's the pinnacle for me, and to do it, you just named some clubs there and some players, which is just absolutely outrageous. It's just special times, and when people are talking about national stadiums and Hampden Park, there's no more special stadium than playing under the lights at Hampden with that raw. It's just. Then again, it has that special raw because the fans are so fanatical about their country. You know what I mean? They're so passionate about their players, want the teams to do so well. And when we refer back to the conversation at the start, you know what I mean? They need to get back to those happy times. They need to go back to them special times and build the foundations and the fundamentals and get them right to support them going forward for the next 8 years, 12 years. Because it's not about the next World Cup. It's not about the next Euros. It's about, like you said, the next Kenny Dalglish, the next, you know what I mean, the next Ali McCoist. These kind of players, they need to replicate these players in order for them to do it. We've got a couple of more questions left for me, and then I think we're going to finish off. Si's going to pick a question from the viewers, so you'll have a look through now. Okay. So my two. Dev, have you got any regrets from football? You know what I mean? I tended to probably stay away from them because the negative thoughts in your head. I know you're big on your mental health, but have you got any regrets from your professional football?
The only regret, I mean, two really. I ended up falling out with Trevor Francis at Blues, and anyone that knows Blues, Trevor's God. Best ever player for Blues, and I did well for him. He just didn't like me, or didn't like me. Didn't rate me that highly, and obviously ended up going. But I sort of left under a shadow. And then same thing again. The way I left Sheffield United, I'd had four really good years at Sheffield United, and I got tapped up to go back to Blues, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I sort of left there under a bit of a crowd as well. And the supporters at Sheffield had been amazing to me for 4 years. So they're little regrets. But then I look back and I think, well, I went to Blues. I ended up getting promoted and playing international football. So it was the right decision. But I probably could have gone about it in a better way.
Yeah, Big Cloud. Well, you've mentioned loads. The final question for me. You've mentioned loads of positives, which is great. What's the worst thing about being a professional footballer? So if that's if that's not going out on a Friday night, for example, or not having a social life towards the end of your career, what's the worst thing about being a player?
To be honest, it's like Christmas and New Year being in hotels. It never bothered me because it was just something that had to be done. I always made up for not going out on a Friday, on a Saturday and Sunday anyway, so that didn't bother me. But I would say the thing that done my head in was the travelling. Yeah. The hours on the bus and hours in a hotel. There's a lot. I found being a footballer, because it's not like today where they're probably training twice a day. You know, for the majority of my career, it was in for 10, done for 12, and you got that much time on your hands. The boredom was a big factor. So I think that there was a lot of downtime, and obviously you got to be careful what you're doing. You got to keep yourself right. You got to keep yourself fit. But yeah, the hours on end travelling and being stuck in hotels. But listen, mate, I've done something for 15 years that my mates would have given their right hand to do. So I'd never moan about anything, really.
Yeah, bang on. And you know what? That wasn't a question to the viewers. That wasn't a question to for people to jump on the back and say, you know what I mean, we were very lucky. We were very lucky to be players, yeah. You know what I mean? But, you know what I mean? What comes with having loads of time in your hands is the bad thoughts and probably the drinking and the gambling. And that's when players have got themselves into loads of trouble. You see that the world's best have got themselves into trouble. The Gazzas of this world and people making the wrong choices because of probably that boredom. And back in the day, there wasn't probably people to support players. There wasn't people to ask if for support. There wasn't people. You know what I mean? We were probably smaller on staff, as in there was no sports science, no psychologists, no people to talk to. And nowadays, you can probably keep yourself busy till probably tea time, and then you're starting over the cycle again. And but mate, your honesty tonight has been absolutely superb. And Si, have you got one more question from?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things I just wanted to throw at you. So Gaz just put a question in, which I found quite interesting because I was thinking it about 5 or 10 minutes ago, and he said, "Would Paul do an episode of Mental Health and Sport with Si?" So that's a good one. I like that. But also, I wanted to know if this question from me first of all: has football ever made you cry, Paul? Whether a game or a moment or
listen.
Anything.
After I scored the penalty in the playoff final, I did an interview and I really, really had to fight back tears then. Yeah, so I think it's an emotional sport, isn't it? You know, really, really emotional. So I'd say that's probably you know, I got relegated once with Notts County as well. You know, that's horrible. It's probably one of the worst feelings for a footballer, but you try not to show it, don't you? But yeah, deep down, it's made me probably cry loads more times than I can even remember. I've been a Blues fan as well, mate. Let me tell you.
I was just about to say that there, Dave, as well. You know, when you're a Birmingham fan, so you probably cry more Saturdays, to be honest. I think as a player, I think you get so many highs which are great and they're up there, and when you hit a low, you know what I mean, it gets you. And if people will be lying if they say it didn't make her upset, you know what I mean. If you're being told that you're not needed from a club, it really gets to you. You know what I mean. And yes, you might not cry in front of people because you try to keep a persona in front of people that you're all hard. But when Dev said, when you're getting that much time by yourself, you know what I mean. It's so you're lonely. You know what I mean. And you think of bad thoughts and you get upset and you can't help but get upset. You know what I mean. If you're in a hotel or you're on the bus and you're away from your family, it's really hard. It's really difficult to not be emotional. You know what I mean. You score a goal. You know what I mean. It doesn't matter what level. It could be your first goal. It could be your last goal. You know what I mean. Because you know what I mean. It's just the emotions get to you, and until that moment happens, you don't know how you're gonna.
And I find as well, I was pretty lucky injury wise, and I never had a long term injury. But some of the lads that I played with who had a year, 18 months out, and I don't know whether I'd have been mentally strong enough to keep focused if I had a year out, because that would have completely broke my heart. And I was lucky, really. And it's funny because I was talking to a young lad at work the other day, and he was asking me about achievements, and he said, "What are you most proud of?" And I look back now, and I think the thing I was most proud of in nearly 15 years, I was never out of contract. So that means somebody wanted me all the time. So it was great to play in the Premier League. It was great to play internationally. But it's nice to look back and think, well, I must have been doing something okay because I was always, you know, being out of contract for a player. That's really stressful. Yeah. Where's the next paycheck coming from? Who am I going to sign for? So although we are really, really lucky to do what we do or to do what we've done, you know, it isn't easy. It isn't easy sometimes, and I can see why players struggle, especially after football. How do you replicate the high of scoring in front of 20,000 people, them all singing your name, everyone wanting to buy you a drink on a Saturday night, then all of a sudden you're not a footballer anymore? You know, it's difficult.
We've said that on ASI. You know, I did Si's mental health show, and that was one of the things that I spoke about quite. No, I wouldn't say freely, but it was more that 1 minute I was a professional footballer and I was somebody. The next minute I was a nobody, and I wasn't being disrespectful to myself there. But that's how I had to get my head round being a player and not being a player, because 1 minute I'm not better than anybody, but I'm one in people's aspirations and people I'm up there, and then the next day I'm just the same as anybody else. I'm out of work, I'm unemployed, and it's a scary situation. There's that transition, and nowadays there's a lot more people to help you within that transition. I think when we played, the transition wasn't there. There was no transition to be had, and you had to get yourself or other people, family, ex-players, to probably help you with that transition. It's a scary time. You know what I mean? You say there about lads now. There's that many players who become unemployed now, out of contract now. I think there's about 1,500 players currently unemployed. You know, we've got the season starting in 2 weeks. It's a scary thing, right?
And the scary thing as well, mate, is I was lucky because obviously with the non-league background, I'd actually done a bit of work before I went pro, so I knew what it was all about. I spoke to some of my mates who have been like cocooned in the system from day one, who've never done a day's work. So it's not easy to go out into the real world and earn yourself 300 or 400, 500 quid a week. I said, you know, you certainly ain't going to be doing 2 hours a day. You know what I mean? So for those lads who have never seen the outside of football, I think it's even more difficult. I think it is because they've got no experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's that getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, doing a full day's work, going to play on the night, getting in at 2 o'clock in the morning, getting up for work again at 7 in the morning, doing the same thing again, and looking forward to a Saturday. It's never ending, or shift work. It's scary. You know what I mean? But we're on about people getting upset about football during football. How lovely is it going to be when fans are back in stadiums this season? The first goal for Cardiff City, for Middlesbrough, for Birmingham, for that first player to do it, for the fans to be there. Listen, there's going to be some tears for everybody, because it's going to be great. But as long as the first goal in those 3 games are for those 3 teams, because there'll be a lot of people crying, but for the wrong reasons. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
100%, mate. Okay, I think we'll cut it a podcast there. What we need to do, and I think, is we need to start later, because your internet connection is fine.
I know. It happens all the time. It happens all the time.
It
happens all the time.
It was always better in the second half.
I told you. I come into the game last 20 minutes. Because everyone's tired.
Super stuff. Here we go. It's crazy. But no, look, Paul, sensational, mate. I really
enjoyed it, lads. Thank you. Thanks for having me,
mate. Your honesty, your character, it just shines through. It's just absolutely amazing, mate. You should be super proud of your career. You know what I mean? That's why when I spoke to Si about you coming on, that I knew exactly what we were going to get tonight. I told everybody about it. You know what I mean? The comments we've had from the viewers, the new viewers, what you brought, and the comments that they've brought, mate. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Cheers, lads. Appreciate it.
And guys, obviously we had Danny Batten Fight Show last night. If you missed it, check it out. It was a really, really interesting one with Jack Eglin, professional fighter. We've got more top guests coming. We've got more shows coming, more series coming. New series of mental health and sport coming. New series of my story coming. Plus some news, hopefully by the end of this week. Contracts are signed, so we will see. But all good. Thank you very much for everyone, for the support, for the comments, for the likes, everything. Please come back, spread the word, and most of all, be safe. Cheers.
It's in! Campbell comes off the bench to be a hero, a superhero. Breakthrough. It's taken a while, but it's been worth the wait for Cardiff City. We are the ones who mark a new beginning.